Kia ora koutou katoa. Welcome to the Charities Services annual meeting coming live from Wellington today. Ko Francesca tuku ingoa. My name is Francesca and I'm a Regional Advisor on the Capability team here at Charities Services. I'm very lucky to be your MC for today's hui. And I'd just like to open up with a karakia. It's a very fitting one for Wellington. Whakatakati hau ki te uru, whakatakati hau ki te tonga. Kia mā taratara ki tai. E hi aki ana te atakura, he tio, he huka, he hauhu. Tihei Moriora. So today we are joined by the Minister for the Community and Voluntary Sector, the Honourable Louise Upston. And we have three members of our board today, the Charity Services Registration Board, Te Rata Atawhai. So with us we have Keel, we have Dr. Bev Gatenby, and our newest member, Terita Hutchinson. So kia ora and welcome to you all. Loretta Lovell is also a board member and she will not be with us today and she sends her apologies. We also have as special guests our Deputy Chief Executive, Maria Robertson, and our General Manager here at Charity Services, Charlotte Stanley. Kia ora kōrua. And of course, most importantly, we have you here online, and I'm just going to have to lean in. We have 110 people and counting online, and I'm sure that number's going to go up in the course of the meeting. We've had a lot of registrations. We're really thrilled to see so many of you people joining us, and we thank you for joining today. The annual meeting is an opportunity for us to talk to you, but also to acknowledge you for the work that you do. We have the opportunity to hear what you have to say, and you have the opportunity to ask questions of us. The advantage of running a digital meeting is that we can connect across Aotearoa, and that is really special for us. So we really look forward to meeting you all here today. It's a little bit different being online, but we're all probably quite used to it now. We know that it continues to be a really busy time for people in the charitable sector, and we really do appreciate the time that you've taken away from your mahi to be with us today. You can pop in your questions at any time using the Q&A box. The questions will be collated after the meeting. We do read them and we do reflect on them, and they do really influence our work. So please pop your questions into the box and know that they will be read by many of us afterwards. Now to the agenda. You will have received an agenda via email, but you may have been too busy to look at it and it might not be handy right now, but let's take a look at how the afternoon's going to run. The first part will consist of 4 speeches, and then we're going to move into a Q&A panel session with some of Charity Services staff. So the Minister will open and her speech will be followed by speeches from the board. So Keel will address us, and then Maria Robertson and Charlotte Stanley. And after the question and answer session, we'll have a 10-minute break and then in the afternoon, so later on, we will have 3 15-minute information sessions, and they are on topics of good governance, annual reporting, and then incorporated society. So we've got someone coming in from MB to do that session. And so if you're an incorporated society and you haven't re-registered under the new Act, then it is time for you to pay attention, because the re-registration process is underway. And then the meeting will finish at 2:30. So now that you know the flow of the meeting, let's get started. And I'd now like to welcome the Minister to open up with the first speech of today.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thanks so much for the opportunity to join you for my very first Charities Services annual meeting. Fantastic that there are so many joining this afternoon, so no matter where in the country you are, welcome. I wanted to just start by saying, I really love the community and voluntary sector, and I want to just start by saying thank you so much for the work that you do. I was really excited about the opportunity to hold this portfolio, because I do know that the community and voluntary sector really is the heart of our communities, and so thank you for what you do. Can I start by acknowledging Keel? You're obviously going to hear from Gwen in a minute. for her service as the chair of the Charities Registration Board, and with Dr. Bev Gattenby and Loretta Lovell for their hard work and commitment to the sector. And just to also congratulate and welcome Teresa Hutchinson on her first annual meeting as well. One of the things that I really enjoy about my job as the Minister is working with a fantastic team at DIA. So to Maria Robertson in particular, and to Charlotte Stanley, who I know will be names very familiar to you. I just want to say thank you for the effort that you put into the charity sector and the community and voluntary sector. It's so important we have a strong sector. So although I've only held this particular role for a year, having been a Member of Parliament, this is my 16th year, I'm well aware of the important role that charities play in our communities. And if I think about the 29,000 registered charities, the work that you do covers so many different areas, whether it's, serving people, whether it's helping to protect the environment, whether it's facilitating sport and recreation. The sector is so important, and there wouldn't be a day that goes by that the Prime Minister doesn't talk about how important it is for government, business and community to work together to maximise the impact we have on the same New Zealanders we all serve. So I wanted to just put on record that I think there's fantastic opportunities ahead of us to look at how we can better align what it is we do. And look, I accept, we're in really challenging economic times. If I think of the many charities that I've met with in my time as Minister, it hasn't gone unnoticed, and often for charities in particular, you are supporting those who are already struggling, and then in challenging times where it's also the charity that's feeling the pressure, I acknowledge that it is challenging. So what I'm really keen to do is to look at how we can work together, better support you, and one of the areas that is a focus for me is how we reduce regulatory burdens. So, for example, if you look at a constrained environment where additional funding might not be an easy option, then how do we make sure that we can make the dollars go further? So I am really interested in any ideas you have, and if you could feed them through to the community and voluntary team at DIA for any of those areas that you think, big or small, that can take away some of the regulatory burden or barrier or things that are just really frustrating, take your time and energy and really aren't of any value to you as an organisation or those that you serve. I'd be really interested to know what they are. We have a Minister for Regulations, and I've said to him on a number of occasions, when we talk about reducing regulation, it has to be for the for purpose or not-for-profit sector as well as government and business. So I would really encourage you to have input. Obviously, the MB consultation on health and safety regulations have closed. So I'm hoping that you have participated in that process. Another big area, obviously, is I've been doing a lot of work with Philanthropy New Zealand and others to look at how we can make the dollars that you do receive go further. And that's what I mean about greater alignment, working with other organisations to see if there's ways we can avoid duplication and make sure the dollars that you do get go further. A third part of my work, which we're actually going to launch next month, is how we grow giving. New Zealanders are incredibly generous in their volunteering of time, and that was a real highlight for me this year with National Volunteering Week, the opportunity to see so many of your organisations and to acknowledge the enormous effort that volunteers put in across New Zealand. So the opportunity is to then say, well, we know we're great at volunteering our time, but for many organisations, actually volunteering funds and resources is just as important. And there's lots of ways we can make it easier for people to give, whether it's through, payroll giving, small and regular amounts, rather than just, because where we are incredibly generous is where there's a big natural disaster, or a very big nationwide campaign. New Zealanders are very, very generous in those times. But for many organisations, actually, it's the bread and butter giving that would provide much more assistance and support. So look out for that next month. It will be a campaign that we are calling the 12 Days of Giving, and of course inspired by the 12 Days of Christmas, looking at not just volunteering time, financial resources, but other resources as well. And if I think about some of the organisations that I've met with over the last year, they've been really innovative and creative about how they can get support, for example, from businesses in their area, where it might be, sharing a company's legal resource, or using some of their HR expertise, doing it as a cluster of charitable organisations in a suburb or in a small town, so that what you do raise can go further, and the contribution that others can make can be in kind, and something that isn't at a cash cost to them, but something that they can easily offer. So look out for that. New Zealanders are incredibly generous with their time, and I'd like to see that New Zealanders are also, over time, more generous with their ability to share other resources. So thank you very much for the opportunity to join you today. I know it's only a brief opportunity to meet with you, but I just do want to say thank you so much for what you do. Your organisations are such a critical part of making our communities and our country the amazing place that it is. So it's your efforts, the time and energy and resources that you put in that make our country such a fantastic place to be. So thank you very much, and appreciate the opportunity to be with you this afternoon, and just really encourage you, if there are ideas and suggestions you have for how we as the government can make your work more impactful, I'm very, very keen to hear. So thanks very much.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Minister. I'd like to now introduce Gwen Keel. She is the Chair of Te Rata Atawhai, the Independent Charities Registration Board. Gwen is going to speak about the board and its role and the work that the board has done over the last year. So welcome, Gwen.
Kia ora, Francesca. Ngā mihi ki a koe mō te karakia today, and also for your lovely welcome. Thank you so much. I just want to acknowledge Minister Upston and congratulate her on her appointment to this really important portfolio. And I can only echo the sentiments of the Minister today regarding the value of your work out in the charities community. The work that you do is so vital to our nation. It's wonderful to have the opportunity to speak to you today, albeit online, but it does allow us to connect all the way across the motu with people who we know are super busy in their day jobs doing the mahi out there in our communities. So thank you, Minister, for taking the time. It's wonderful to hear your aspirations for this sector, your interest and your passion for this work. I also want to acknowledge my fellow board members who are online today, including Tarita Hutchison, who's just joined us recently. And I want to acknowledge our senior charities services staff, Maria Robertson and Charlotte Stanley, and all of the charities services team who are online today. There's an enormous amount of work that goes into the annual meeting, and I just want to thank everybody for all their work. I really want to thank everybody for taking the time to join online today. I know that it is difficult to take time out and come to sessions like this, but I particularly want to commend Charity Services for the opportunity, not only speak to you, but also for the wonderful sessions this afternoon. As somebody who works in an incorporated society myself, that will definitely be a session I'll be dialing into. So as most of you will know, it is my privilege to chair the board, and the board is an independent 5-person board which makes decisions about registering and deregistering charities in New Zealand. In practice, most of the decisions are made by Charity Services within the Department of Internal Affairs, acting under formal delegation from the board, but the board is generally dealing with matters that are more complex and novel, and many of you will be familiar with some of those cases that we've dealt with over the past period of time. I did want to briefly introduce you to our newest board member. So Vaiahu Tarita Hutchinson has just joined the board in October 2024, and we feel very fortunate that Minister Upston has appointed Tarita. She's an experienced trustee and fiduciary. She has over 30 years experience in senior advisory roles across the Pacific and in the public, private and not-for-profit sectors. She's a chartered member of the New Zealand Institute of Directors and a fellow of its equivalent CPA Australia, and she brings extensive governance expertise and a strong commitment to community service with her to the board. So Tarita is dedicated to creating sustainable impact through her work, especially within Pacifica communities. And I know she's excited to bring her particular skills in financial governance, strategic planning, and community-focused solutions to her role on Te Rata Atawhai. So nau mai, haere mai, and kia orana, Tarita. We're so pleased that you've joined us. I want to thank Dr. Bev Gatenby and Loretta Lovell for their continued service on the board. Bev joined the board in 2018 and Loretta in 2021, and they continue to just be a wonderful support and wealth of knowledge as we carry out our services on the board. Our work program in this past year is really heavily focused on operationalising the changes to the Charities Act. And I particularly want to acknowledge today the sector group whom we consulted with in relation to procedures around our objections process principles, and we noted their valuable feedback in that process. So I want to thank them very much for that. As you'll appreciate, when the legislation changes, there's a whole lot of process and procedure that has to change along with it. And I really want to acknowledge the team at Charity Services and the board for really constructively working through those changes together. So we're looking forward to seeing more of you in the coming year. We're looking forward to seeing some of you face to face throughout the year, but just want to thank you again for your time today, and I really want to encourage you to attend the knowledge sessions this afternoon. And again, want to just thank my fellow board members, Bev, Loretta and Tarita, for their continued service. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. And back to you, Francesca.
Thanks so very much, Gwen. That's great to hear more about the work of Te Rata Atawhai, and I'm sure our attendees would like to have a little bit more information so they understand a little bit more about your work. Next, I'm going to hand over to our Deputy Chief Executive, Maria Robertson, and she's going to talk about how Charity Services fits into the wider context of the department. So Maria leads our branch, Kawa ki te iwi, or Service Delivery and Operations. So over to you now, Maria.
Thanks, Francesca. Nau mai, haere mai, piki mai, kaki mai. Ko Tararua Timonga, ko Kairangi Te Awa, ko Ngāti Pākehā Te Iwi, ko McAlman Te Hapu, ko Kaiwhakaari Mātua Kawa ki Te Iwi Te Tari Tai Whenua, ko Maria Robertson aho. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Hi everyone, I'm Maria Robertson. You've heard a few people mention my name. I have the privilege of being the Deputy Chief Executive here at Te Tari Tai Whenua, the Department of Internal Affairs, with oversight of our charity services area, amongst other things. I particularly want to mihi to the Honourable Louise Upston, our Minister for the Community and Voluntary sector. We've now been working with the Minister for 12 months. We thoroughly enjoy that relationship and her commitment to the sector. Also to Gwen Keel, our Chair. Gwen brings an enormous measured response to matters. I know I find it immensely useful talking with her about quite complex charities matters and the work that she does to lead the board, which of course is made up of Loretta Lovell, Tarita Hutchinson, who's who's new to the board. Welcome, Tarita. Dr. Bev Gatenby as well. And of course, I can't go past Charlotte Stanley, who's one of my direct reports. Charlotte is an enormous contributor, not just to the sector, but also to our wider branch leadership, and has worked tirelessly really with her team over the last 12 months. Our branch has 5 broad priorities, which I'm just going to talk you through in terms of their poignancy as it relates to charities and the community and voluntary sector. Firstly, equity of access to public service. This is what we believe in. We believe that part of our role is to make sure that we don't inadvertently create barriers for people to access public services, but actually we work actively to bring any barriers down. We have extended our reach this year. We've completed around 160 different interactions with different organisations over the course of the year in order to make sure that we are actually doing all we can to keep the pipeline of knowledge and information and access to services as widely open as possible. We are also committed to statutory, regulatory and service excellence every day. And the reason that's so important is because not only registered charities, but also people who rely on and require trust and confidence in the charitable sector require us to be excellent every day. You know, we often talk about the fact that it's not good enough for us to say we'll be excellent next week or next year we'll be excellent. Actually, today we have to be excellent, and that is our commitment to you, the people that we serve, and to communities, iwi and hapu. We're trying to do that by making sure our advice is targeted, where actually we have we intervene or have activities that have the greatest value, but also that we take all of the feedback we can to continuously improve our practices as regulators and as deliverers of service. Supporting iwi, hapu and communities to lead their own development is vital. The Minister just referred to the importance of community in terms of New Zealand and to society, and we believe the same. We work alongside our colleagues across other parts of our organisation to make sure that we have in-person sessions, that we understand tikanga, that we apply cultural knowledge and practices appropriately, to do all those things that ensure that people see us as partnering with them when appropriate, but also walking in their shoes and making sure that we're supporting people to act with their own authority in this really important area in the sector. A couple of other things. Building on our strengths to create a nimble, engaged and resilient workforce. If we don't draw on people's strengths, people will not be engaged. It's as simple as that. So actually building and creating a positive environment, nurturing a culture of positivity and strengths base means that our people are more engaged and more likely to value and treat as a great privilege the role that being a public servant is, and one that I truly believe in and I know that is supported by my own leadership team. We have 36 people dedicated to this kaupapa and charity services, each of whom works incredibly hard and brings their best to this job every day. And part of how we measure that is a series of performance measures, but also we make sure that we look for independent feedback, not just from people who are in the sector, but also from others, just to constantly and consistently tell us how good a job we are doing and where we might have room for improvement, both individually, because we all do, but also collectively. Finally, a priority for us is creating standout cultural capability and honouring the Māori Crown relationship. And this is really important because we are the Crown. We are public servants. We do have an obligation to work in partnership with iwi Māori. And the best way we can do that is by working closely with iwi and with hapu around the things that really matter. We're committed to that. We're committed to learning and listening and making sure we get things right. We're identifying ways that charities can self-identify in terms of being iwi Māori organisations and charities, as well as making sure that our information, knowledge and our own understanding is improved and targeted as best as we possibly can. But our biggest priority is to you, the sector, And I just wanted to add my thanks to the Minister, to the Chair, and of course Charlotte will follow, to say thank you for everything you do for the people of New Zealand through the work that you do. There's about 110,000 community-based organisations in this country. We'd be lost without you. So thank you so much to the 29,000 registered charities for what you give to us all as contributing to the communities that we're part of. Ngā mihi.
Oh, kia ora, Maria. Thank you so much. It's really interesting to see how charity services fits into the wider department's priorities. Thank you. Let me introduce Charlotte Stanley. Charlotte is the General Manager of Ngā Rātanga Kaupapa Atawhai Charity Services, and she's going to talk about our work over the last year and what you can look forward to seeing next year. So over to you now, Charlotte.
Thanks, Francesca, and tēnā koutou katoa. Ko vaia toko maunga, ko Vaisingango toko awa, ko Kiwa Moana toko moana, ko Hamu toko iwi, ko Charlotte Stanley toko ingoa. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Charlotte Stanley and I am the General Manager for Charity Services, and it is my absolute pleasure to welcome you here today for our annual meeting. This annual meeting is a chance for us to share a bit about our work over the past year, but it's also a really important opportunity for you to communicate with us and share with us how you found our operating over the past year. So please feel free to ask questions, give us feedback, and even to highlight any areas of concern. There's no question that the charitable sector is a vital part of Aotearoa's society. Among many other things, it provides social services, social cohesion, and is a key contributor to our country's economy. And most of you volunteer your time to be a part of it. So thank you for the work you do every day and for taking the time to be here today. As you're experiencing, this year's annual meeting, we're continuing to run it in a digital forum due to the wide reach that we achieved last year and the overwhelming positive feedback about the content and the format. This year's annual meeting, we've had a record number of registrations with over 1,300 people signing up, and I'd like to thank you for your commitment to keeping yourselves updated and taking opportunities to communicate with us. Before I continue, I'd like to acknowledge our Minister for the Community and Voluntary Sector, the Honourable Louise Upston. Thank you for taking the time to be here today, Minister, and for your dedication to this portfolio. I'd also like to acknowledge the members of Te Rata Atawhai, the Charities Registration Board. You've heard from our Chair, Gwen Keel. There's also Dr. Bev Gatenby. Loretta Lovell unfortunately can't be with us today, but a special welcome to our new board member, Tarisa Hutchinson, for her first board meeting. And I'd also like to make a special thank you to our Deputy Chief Executive, Maria Robertson, for her support and guidance to our group over the last year. So a little bit about us. At Charity Services, our primary purposes are to promote public trust and confidence in the charitable sector, and to encourage and promote the effective use of charitable resources. We achieve this by carrying out a range of regulatory functions that are set out in the Charities Act 2005. These include things like maintaining the Charities Register, a public register for over 29,000 charities, monitoring compliance, engaging and educating, and inquiring and investigating. We're a small but dedicated team of 36 people, as Maria has said, and we work mainly across 4 teams and are predominantly based in Wellington, but we've got a small presence in Auckland as well. Just a quick snapshot of the sector over the past year. Looking back over the past year, it's humbling to see the impact that charities have had across Aotearoa. On average, every week there have been over 1.7 million hours of volunteering given out to our communities by more than 170,000 volunteers. In addition to this, more than 100,000 people work full-time in the charitable sector, making up around 4% of Aotearoa's workforce. There are also currently over 121,000 individual officers and 227 groups. We've talked a bit about the implementation of the Charities Act changes and changes to reporting in our newsletters. This has been a notable milestone over the past year. These changes are designed to enhance transparency and accountability and ensure that the Act continues to support the charitable sector. Some of the key changes have included wider definitions for charities officers and improved governance practices. Also, our board has increased from 3 to 5 members. For us, the changes involve providing charities more time if we need additional information to consider their applications, as well as increasing transparency in our decision-making processes. Over the 2023-24 financial year, we've engaged with 192 charities through our online clinics and had over 3,000 people sign up for our webinars. This year, we've also hosted 4 in-person community sessions nationwide, presenting on governance and financial reporting. The last session is actually going to be on the 28th of November in Dunedin, so if you're in the Otago region, please check out our website for how to register for that event. We've also approved over 1,100 registration applications and responded to over 17,000 queries from you and the public. In the coming year, we're focusing on helping charities to adapt to the changes in the Charities Act and the new reporting standards. We'll continue to provide resources and guidance tailored to the diverse needs of charities, and we're planning to increase the number of webinars we provide next year. We choose these topics based on the valuable feedback that we've received throughout our engagement events over the past year. We'll also continue to look for ways on how we can keep improving our services and processes. We'll continue to strive to engage more effectively with kaupapa Māori charities, ensuring we meet their unique needs, and we'll enhance our support for charities serving Pacific peoples and other ethnic communities, building stronger connections over the next year. In summary, we know the importance for New Zealand of a well-regulated and trusted charitable sector. So we've worked hard over the last year to provide more resources, improve our engagement, and effectively investigate and take action where we've found serious wrongdoing. We do all this with the goal of contributing to a well-governed, transparent and thriving charitable sector so that you can continue to do the vital things that you do for our communities. So like everyone that's gone before me, I would like to add my sincere thanks to you all for the incredible work that you've done over the past year and continue to do. I hope you enjoy the meeting. Ka kite.
Thank you so much, Charlotte. It's really fascinating to hear all those facts, and I stand here with a sense of pride, and I hope that you are feeling pride when you hear those statistics of what happens in the charitable sector. I mean, they're quite astonishing figures. So thank you. That concludes the formal part of the meeting today, and now we're going to move into the Q&A session. Welcome everybody. Nice to see you all. So before we get started on the panel session, and I hope you're all putting your questions in the chat, and I will know because the chat's right in front of me now. So please ask your questions. This is your opportunity. We've got all these beautiful people here who are ready to answer them. But before we start, let's introduce the panel to you, and they've all been chosen because they are involved in different areas of work at Charity Services. And so I'm going to go to my right, and Helen Stephen is sitting here, and she is the manager of engagement and business improvement. Helen looks after 2 teams, the capability team and the charity support team. You've met Charlotte Stanley, our general manager, so kia ora, Charlotte. Dawn Logan is to the right of Charlotte, and Dawn is a senior accountant on a regulatory team, so the regulatory space, but she works across Charity Services, so welcome Dawn. And you may have attended an annual meeting before and met Andrew Newbury. So Andrew Newbury is our principal advisor, and he provides a range of advice across charity services as well. So welcome to the panel, lovely to see you all. So the first question is about incorporated societies. If you're an incorporated society and changing your legal entity type to a trust, do you need to deregister and submit a new application with Charity Services?
Kia ora. So the short answer is no, you don't need to re-register with us. You'll obviously need to have the conversation about your kind of legal structure with MB and make sure that that's all tidied up. But from our perspective, if you're retaining the same charitable purpose and the same outputs, then all you need to do is let us know through a notice of change on our website, and it's a really simple process to go through.
So the re-registration process is with the incorporated societies?
So depending on what you do there, that's a conversation between you and MB, but with us it's really just as simple as letting us know through an update that you've changed your kind of legal structure.
Awesome, thank you, Andrew. This next question is about audits. With the difficulty in getting audits completed, and for many charities the cost can be quite high, some over $20,000, if the financial statements are prepared by a chartered accountant, could those accounts be treated as adequate, with perhaps a certificate saying that the administration of the particular charity is proper and the trustees are carrying on the trust in accordance with its trust deed? I'd like to take that question.
I'll take that, thank you. Thank you for your question. No, the short answer is no. However, there's a lot of room in there. The standards, the External Standards Board sets the standards, but also the Charities Act sets the law. And in our law, some charitable entities are required to be audited, depending on certain thresholds, which you can find on our website or in the Act. And that is not negotiable, unfortunately. So that does need to be audited. Certain charities will need to be either reviewed or audited, depending on the threshold, by an accountant that is a qualified accountant. That needs to be done. Now, if your audit requirement is only in your deed or in your rules, that is entirely up to you. If you don't also fall under the law, then that is something that you can change. You can take that requirement out. You can alter the requirement to a review, which is less extensive and also less expensive.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Dawn. Next question. This one's about opportunities for governance training. Can you please confirm if there are any free opportunities for governance training?
Great question. This one's back to me. So, spoiler alert, I'm going to be doing after this session a quick little information session on good governance where I'll talk a little bit more about some of the opportunities and resources that are available to you. But yeah, there are really good sector-led and sector-delivered resources on good governance. There's a lot of really good information hubs that kind of explain what good governance looks like. And, there's a lot of areas that you can look into, as well as further information, I think, that we provide that Helen might want to talk a bit more about.
Thank you, Andrew and Francesca. Just to add to what Andrew's saying, next week we are, in fact, starting on Friday, we are running 2 webinars that are publicly available to all charities on this topic of governance and some of the changing requirements for you to consider in your charities. Francesca will be leading these, and if you would like to join, please go to our website, our Charity Services website, look on our events page and you'll be able to register to attend those webinars there. If for some reason you're not able to go, a recording of the webinar will be put on the website sometime following the actual webinar, so there's an opportunity for you to get the information a little bit later.
Thank you, Helen. This is a question about banking. So requiring all officers having to comply with AML, so anti-money laundering legislation, is a big frustration and a waste of everyone's time. All banks and all their staff appear to have different interpretations of what is required for compliance. How can the requirements be made easier to comply with?
Okay, I'll take this one. My previous role before coming to Charity Services was in the New Zealand Police Financial Intelligence Unit. and I worked quite closely with the AML-CFT legislation. So I can answer this one. And the short answer is, I'm sorry, we don't really have anything to do with that in the charities sector under the Charities Act. However, the Ministry of Justice is going to be your source for that, for any questions relating to AML-CFT and whether or not there are some ways to work with the banks and to get them to understand what your limitations are and how to best work with the banks and other reporting entities that need information from you to do their role under the AML-CFT Act.
Thank you very much. I can add to that too. I mean, I know there is a lot of frustration for charities with this, and there's some great work being done in the sector. There are people who are working with the banks and the Ministry of Justice on this, because we have heard that it's really difficult, and I've experienced this with my own charity. So there is work going on. This one's about filing fees, this next question. Why does the filing fee kick in at $10,000 for a small charity? It's too low. That figure is the cost of a reasonable food box. I'm not sure I understand that. Why does the filing fee kick in at $10,000 for a small charity? Also, I think that what they're saying is that actually it should be a bit higher.
I'll take a go at answering that question. Look, it's a really interesting question, and obviously in our current climate, something that we would like to be looked at. This isn't in our control, actually. It's not in our remit to decide the fees, but this is something that the government may look at in the coming years. But yeah, it's not something that we can control at this point, and it's not set to change in the near future.
Thank you. Perfect. And the next question, we still need your questions, please. So the panel's here for quite some time, and I see there's not very many in here, so feel free to pop them into the Q&A box. The next question is, does Charity Services prepare an annual report, and where can we see it, please?
Thank you. That's an excellent question, and yes, we do. We actually call it our annual review. You will find it on our website. It's just been published to our website only in the last 24 hours, I believe. It's full of really interesting information about, and some statistics about the previous year. So please go and have a look at that. I'm sure you'll find lots of interest in there.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Helen. The next question is about audited financial statements. I'm just giving our panel a little heads up so they can listen carefully if this is their line of work. With the more regulation on audited financial statements and them being due within 6 months of the year end date, is it likely that the due date will be extended to help with getting all the things we need audited done?
I'm not aware of any ideas to extend that due date. I believe that's set also in legislation. So what charities can do if they are having trouble with filing on time and meeting their deadlines is to contact us as soon as they know that they will have trouble meeting that deadline and that due date. Not right at your due date, maybe towards the end of your year, or maybe even a month later, if you understand that maybe the audit's going to go a little bit longer, or you're having trouble finding an auditor. Contact us. Contact the call center or through our website. Our email is info@charities.govt.nz. And we can work with you. We can talk about what a more reasonable due date would be for your specific charity in your specific circumstances.
Fantastic, John. Thank you very much. Next question. This is another one. I'm just going to read the question. It's about modified opinions, though. What happens if I receive a modified opinion on our financial statement?
Okay, a modified opinion is really just an indicator from your auditor that the audit found some irregularities, or perhaps there wasn't everything there that they needed. It's not always the most terrible thing. There are several categories of modified opinions, but effectively it's just there to help your the readers of your information understand what is happening with your charity. It's transparency, because also with a modified opinion, they also explain why the opinion is modified. A lot of charities will find this, especially because they are receiving cash, and cash is very difficult to control. And so it might just be as simple as that. But it provides information to us and to anyone who is interested in your charity. Now, it does go into a queue that I look at personally to see what's happening there. Most of them, it's just information, so it's not something to be too concerned with. If you do receive, say, a disclaimer of opinion or an adverse opinion, that may affect people who are looking to fund your charity, but that is something certainly to discuss with your auditor and to see how you can work to get to a clean opinion.
Excellent. This question is about advocacy. So the question is, can charities engage in advocacy for their cause?
Yes, so charities absolutely can and do advocate for a number of causes that they feel really passionately about. And that's been, I think, validated really clearly in the courts. So the Supreme Court, in their ruling around Family First, was really clear that if you're advocating for a charitable purpose, if your aim, if your goal is a clearly defined and understood charitable purpose, advocacy is fine. And it's actually something that is encouraged. Obviously, if the advocacy kind of leans into a space where maybe that's not an acceptable charitable purpose, that's where you find the issues. But yeah, advocacy is totally fine.
I think that's a great explanation, but I might also add that there's actually really good advice on our website about this. We've got blogs, we've got information, we've got FAQs. So if you do have any issues about this, you're worried about this, please head to our website for some more information.
Perfect. And just to help you find that information, if you just type in advocacy in the search box, you should find all that information. Thank you, Charlotte. What are Charity Services doing about charities that don't file an annual return? When would a charity be struck off or removed as a charity if they don't file annual returns?
Thank you, that's a good question. I mean, a charity's annual return is a really important way for the public to see what's happening in a charity, and so that adds to public's trust in the charitable sector and the transparency of the sector. So annual returns are really, really important. If a charity has not filed an annual return after 2 consecutive years, then we take action to begin the process to remove a charity from the register.
Right. Excellent. Thank you very much, Helen. Our charity needs deed and plan updating, but we don't have any money to pay for the people who can help. Where can I find free assistance, please? That's a great question.
That is a very good question, and I'm not sure we can immediately provide you the answer. We can't provide that assistance from Charity Services. It's outside the scope of our function. I'm sorry to tell you, but that is the situation. There are numerous community organisations that support the functioning of charities as well. So you might want to consider exploring their websites to see if there might be some advice available there. I think it's probably true to say for the most part that this is a task that does sit within the scope of your responsibility and something you would need to consider in your financial planning. But that said, there could well be sources of free information available.
Perfect. Thank you, Helen. The next question is about incorporated societies legislation. So I'll read it and we'll see if we can answer this. With the new incorporated societies legislation, if there is an incorporated society as a national entity, can affiliated organisations to this entity be a charitable trust rather than an incorporated society themselves, making members of a national entity rather than regional or local? Secondly, if so, can these charitable trusts be incorporated? So I'll just read that again. With the new incorporated societies legislation, if there is an incorporated society and it's the national body, can affiliated organisations to this entity be a charitable trust rather than an incorporated society themselves?
I'm going to have a go at answering this. And the first thing I'd like to say is that these matters are for the Companies Office. The legal structure of charities, whether that be an incorporated society or a charitable trust, is something that's managed through the Companies Office in the first instance. So I suggest that you take a look at the Companies Office website to find more information about that. It's quite a complex question, so we might need to come back to you with further information. I'll just look at my colleagues here and see if anyone is leaping to provide additional information.
I'm going to leap.
Okay, thank you, Francesca.
So I am going to leap. So this is a question about structures, and it isn't as technical as it sounds, and it did sound technical, but what they're saying is we've got an incorporated society and we want to affiliate some charitable trusts to that, and that is totally perfectly okay. And then the second part of the question that I didn't read to the panel, but it said, can the charitable trust be incorporated? And yes, they can. So you can have an incorporated society as the kind of parent entity and other charitable trusts as affiliated. But if you want to do that, you'll need to go to MB and register first with them.
And just to clarify, just to add to that, we're familiar with the terms MB, which is the Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment. That ministry is the host of the Companies Office. So when we're talking about MB, we're actually referring to the Companies Office there.
They run those registers of incorporated societies, charitable trusts, companies. So they run a whole pile of different registers as well. So Helen is very correct there. There is a question here about annual returns. Is there a standard format required for an annual return?
There is for certain tiers. And you can find those on our website. We have templates for people to use. There's a simplified one if you're tier 4. It's a one-pager. It's great. There are new templates and new standards that are effective now. So you can have a look and find them there, and find any links that you might need also to the External Standards Board for more information.
Perfect, thank you. Can anyone tell us about the work that went on with the forms? There was a lot of work last year.
My colleagues are looking at me. Yes, I can talk a little bit about the forms. So yeah, over the last year, Charity Services did a lot of work to revise and kind of review the forms that you use to register, to report, and to update your details with us. That came about from a variety of different sources. Obviously, there were changes to the Charities Act. There were also changes that the External Reporting Board had made to the reporting standards. And there were a bunch of changes that had been suggested to us both by the sector and by kind of other interested parties within government. So we'd had some really good conversations with the charity sector group to talk about maybe things that they thought could be sitting more accurately in that information that the annual return provides. So we did a lot of consultation with the sector, and some of you may recall that we came out over a series of months with wide consultation. We ran a bunch of surveys, we ran a bunch of meetings, and we provided draft versions of all of the forms before they kind of went live. Then that resulted in changes that we went through with our vendor, and we delivered that early this year. So all of the new forms are now available on our website, and they're totally available to use to you, including a new one which I think was mentioned earlier, which is a combined, for Tier 4 charities, a combined annual return and performance report, should you wish to look at that opportunity.
Fantastic, Andrew, and while you're holding the mic, please keep holding it. So can you tell us a little bit more about that combined Tier 4 report? Because it is a new thing. And
so really the combined annual, at the moment, any charity produces you have your financials and you have your annual return, and those are kind of traditionally separate. And for many charities, they may want to continue having a separate performance report or financials and the separate annual return. But for some charities, particularly those who are really small, they don't have a lot of money coming in, it may not make sense for them to produce two separate documents to provide to us. So the combined form gives them the opportunity to just do it once, get that information in, get it sorted out, and then you don't have to think about it again. So it's just about making it easier. It's not going to work for every single charity, but for those who it does work for, we're really excited to offer that.
And that is quite a handy form, isn't it, for really small organisations who don't own anything much or employ people or lease buildings?
Yeah, so if you're a really small community group who's registered as a charity and you're basically we're talking sort of a few people just gathered together to achieve a common goal, but you don't maybe have, like you say, employees or property or anything like that, this could be a really good option for you.
Fantastic. Nice to see how it's making it easier for people to comply. There's a question here about a volunteer undertaking the tasks of a treasurer, but they're not willing to sit on the board. Interested in the implications of this?
It's a great question. I suppose it'll depend on the nature of the work that they're doing. So obviously, or maybe not obviously, but the definition of officer, so who counts as your officers, has changed over the last year, and for many charities it's gotten a little bit wider. So the key thing here is if that person is making substantial decisions on significant matters that relate to your charity. So if we're talking about they're setting the direction or helping to set the direction that your organisation is moving in, then maybe they do need to be considering themselves an officer. But it will depend on your individual circumstances.
Fantastic. This is another auditing question, and auditors are hard to find in the charitable sector. So the question says, does Charity Services offer auditing services, or do they give options for auditors who will audit accounts annually? We've had difficulty finding an auditor for our Tier 2 charity. So that's one of the larger size charities.
Unfortunately, we don't provide that service as we are the regulator. So I'm not sure the best way to find an auditor outside of going to the Chartered Accountants New Zealand website and looking for an auditor in your area. That might be the best way to find one.
We have actually heard this from a few of the Tier 2 charities. So I think another thing that you can do is contact other charities and see who they're working with and see if they've got availability through their accountants.
That's a great idea. So I live in Hastings, and your community sessions haven't come to the Hawke's Bay. When are you coming to see us?
That's a great question, and wouldn't it be fantastic to be able to get all around the country? Over this last year, the team has been to Auckland, Christchurch, Hamilton, here in Wellington, and is going to Dunedin later this year. At the end of this year and early next year, we'll start planning our community sessions for the year ahead. We have to take into account our constraints and balance out the best use of our resource. We actually only have a tiny team of people who are available to go, and by tiny I mean 3. And we have quite a limited budget, so we're always looking at how we can reach the biggest number of charities with the resources we have. Now, this is probably difficult if you're listening in from Hastings and going, well, we're quite small. There's a lot of people here, but we're quite small. And that's one of the considerations we have to balance. But we'll certainly consider your area in our planning for the year ahead. I think just to add to that, though, we are really mindful of how we can reach as many charities as possible, given the resources that we have. And we have already begun to deliver considerably more online opportunities for people to get information and ask their questions. We're delivering a number of webinars. Well, we've already delivered a number of webinars since the beginning of July, and we've had over 1,400 people attend those. We've got more webinars coming up in November, and we'll be running a number of webinars next year as well. We advertise these in our newsletter, and so that's another really good way for you to gather information and ask questions live.
Brilliant. We've got time for one question if it's a very short answer, because we're just about to go to a break now. So the last question of the day is, what is the number one function of Charity Services?
Who better to answer that than our General Manager?
Thanks, Helen. Well, I talked a little bit about this in my chat. Our purpose is to maintain trust and confidence in the charitable sector and to encourage good use of charitable resources. And we take that really seriously as our role as a regulator, and there are a number of ways that we do that through registration, through monitoring, and through our investigations.
Perfect. Thank you very much, and we're sticking right to time. So it's now time to a virtual round of applause for our panel, please. Thank you very much. And we're going to have a short break now. I would like to see you back here at 1:44. Welcome back, everybody. I hope you got a little break there and maybe got a cup of tea or a glass of water. We're now going into the afternoon session, so it's a little bit different from the formal piece we had before. And so we're going to have 3 15-minute sessions where each speaker is going to talk about a topic for 10 minutes. I'm going to try and keep them on time. And we'll have 5 minutes at the end for your questions. So that means we'll probably only be able to answer 3 maximum. But get your questions into the chat as Andrew is speaking. I'm going to introduce Andrew. He's come back to talk to us about good governance. So over to you now, Andrew.
Kia ora. Thank you, Francesca, for the lovely introduction and the offer to try and keep me to time. I will attempt to do that myself as well. So again, kia ora koutou katoa. To those of you who were here for the Q&A, welcome back and hello again. For those who are just joining us, my name is Andrew. It's on the slide. I'm the Principal Advisor at Charities Services. I'm here to talk to you a little bit about good governance today and what that means for charities. I'll also talk about the changes for reviewing governance that came in last year and what you need to do. I know many charities have questions about the requirement to review their governance procedures, and it's a good opportunity for us to all get on the same page. Today, I'm going to go over what do we mean by good governance and what does that look like? What do you need to do to carry out a governance review? And what resources are out there to help? And I know that that's something that we did get asked in the Q&A just before. I'll then be rejoined by our MC Francesca, and she and I will discuss a few of your questions. Before I get into it, I know governance can be a bit of an intimidating term, but it really doesn't have to be. Good governance is all about setting yourself up for success. It gives you and your charity direction, it keeps everyone safe, and it gives your supporters confidence. I've only got 15 minutes all up, and governance can be a pretty big topic. So I'll try and keep time for questions, but we probably won't be able to answer every single one. If there's anything that you'd like more information on, or you don't think we got a chance to cover it today, please do get in touch with the team. I would also encourage you to sign up for one of our upcoming webinars that are coming up both later this week and next week. So please do come along to one of those. Francesca will be very ably telling you about good governance. So what do we mean when we talk about good governance? Basically, good governance is about having the right supports in place to help your charity run effectively. These help you make good decisions and give you process to fall back on when times get a little bit tough. There are some key things you can focus on to make sure you're doing this well. A really simple but important thing is having officers who are engaged and focused on your mission. Officers have a responsibility to act in the best interests of their charity, to make sure it remains focused on its charitable purpose and the benefit it provides to the public. To do that, they need to be genuinely involved in the decision-making process and considering the direction of their charity. Officers should know what their role is and how their charity's rules support them to achieve those. Engaged officers should also know what policies are in place to help them manage things like conflicts of interest, disputes between officers, and finances. All of these things can and will come up in the course of running a charity, but they're not the end of the world as long as you manage them effectively. It's always better to be prepared for these things and have them not happen than to be caught off guard. When putting policies in place, it's good to remember that one size won't fit all. Smaller charities are not likely to have big separate policies. A lot of it will just be within their rules document. Larger charities are probably going to have separate policies as they're often working with more people and more money. Good governance is also about accountability to your members and your beneficiaries. Transparency about what you do and how you do it is really important so your supporters can have confidence in your mahi and make informed decisions. This isn't just about sharing your annual report or sending a newsletter, although those are really cool things to do as well. It's about how you run and record your meetings and the decisions you make. Well-governed charities are also going to be on top of their annual reporting to Charity Services. This links in with what my colleague Lex will cover a little bit later on, but good reporting ensures your supporters can see what you do with your time and resources and be confident about supporting you. In October last year, a new requirement came in for charities. You now need to review your governance procedures every 3 years and tell us you've done it. I understand that there has been a bit of concern about what charities need to do here. I thought this would be a good opportunity to clarify things and hopefully dispel some myths about what might be out there. The Charities Act says that charities must review their governance procedures at least every 3 years. When they do that, they need to look at whether these procedures are fit for purpose, whether they help the charity both advance its charitable purpose and to comply with the Charities Act. So there are a couple of things to unpack here. Firstly, governance procedures means your rules, for example, your constitution or your trust deed, along with other policies that help you run your organisation, like a conflict of interest policy or a process for managing people and volunteers. Review is, I think, a term that can worry people a little bit. It's easy to kind of imagine some massive, expensive exercise with external auditors. That's not what the Act is requiring. It's about prompting charities to have the conversation internally. Do we have the right procedures in place to keep operating effectively? So what a review looks like in practice will be different for each charity, but it could be as simple as your chair or another member of your governing body leading a discussion on governance at your strategy meeting. Make sure everyone's reread your rules document ahead of the meeting, and then look at whether your charitable purpose is clear and reflects what you currently do. Think about whether you might need to make changes or updates, but if everything is working and meets your needs, you're all set. If not, this maybe is a good opportunity for your charity to think about what changes you need to make. Either way, think about taking clear minutes and show any decisions that you make. Once you've done that, the annual return form that we introduced has a spot where you can indicate that you've reviewed things in the last 3 years. Then you're sorted. This information then shows the public that you're on top of things. I would be remiss to talk about good governance without mentioning some of the resources that are out there to help you. Sector organisations have done really great work developing resources with community groups and charities in mind. Depending on your needs, the size of your organisation and the sort of work you do, there is all sorts of useful content available. I've included a few examples on this slide, and there's a whole lot more that we regularly share on our website or in our newsletter. The sort of resources available range from good governance codes and courses to regular events featuring governance professionals. A number of websites, including the ones on this slide, offer resource hubs. So whether you're looking for a policy template or information on chairing a meeting well, you can find the resource that's right for your particular situation. I'd really encourage you to have a look at these resource hubs. There's a wealth of information and support at your fingertips. One resource that we do regularly point people towards is the Community Resource Kit. That's a guide to setting up and running community groups in New Zealand. It's a really great resource covering things from legal structures through to record keeping and fundraising, and you can find that on CommunityNet Aotearoa. Chances are, if you've got a question about governance, someone has already created a really well thought out resource to deal with it. I don't have the time to list every single one of them, but please do have a look at some of these hubs. They're super helpful. On top of the great support and resources the sector offers, we at Charity Services also provide a few things to help you on your governance journey. A key one here is the governance checklist for charities, which we publish to help people out with the governance review. This checklist goes through step by step on some of the key governance procedures you might need to consider reviewing, and it points you towards further resources if you look at some of those and you think, I want a bit more of a deep dive. We also have resources for new officers, which go through the top 9 things that you should know when you step into a governance role for the first time, and a charity handbook, which you can use to collect all of your important information in one place. Finally, if you have questions about good governance, the team are here to help. You can get in touch via email or come along to one of our many events where we can cover one of your questions. So if in doubt, please reach out. Thank you so much for your time and attention. Now seems like a really good opportunity for some questions, so I'll invite Francesca back to help pass on your queries.
Awesome, Andrew. Thank you very much. That was a great presentation, and you're so right. There's amazing resources out there in the sector. So do some Googling or have a look at our website or the many websites out there. We do have some questions coming through, so I will just have a look at what they are. The first one, is it true that a charity can run with only one trustee?
I think for the most part, no, but it will depend on your rules. So your rules document will stipulate the number of trustees or governing officials that your charity needs to have. So if you're operating with less than that, that will probably be a problem and you'll be in contravention of your own rules. So in all instances, I would encourage you to look at your rules first and they'll tell you how many you should have.
It doesn't seem that you'd run very well with
No.
only one trustee too. That, I mean, there's a bit of a conflict of interest if you're the only person making decisions.
Correct.
Andrew, the next question. What criteria or factors would make members of an advisory board to a charitable trust officers?
It's a great question. And it's similar to one that we got in the Q&A session before, which I guess is about how, like, at what point do you kind of move into that space of becoming what is defined as an officer in the new Act, or in the revised Act, I should say. So for the most part, it's really about those people who are making significant decisions about substantial matters related to your charity. So we're talking about things like setting strategy, or really making big financial decisions about the future of your charity, what it spends its money, time, resources on. We wouldn't expect to see everyone who's just providing advice, but if that advice kind of tips over into decision making, then it's probably something that you should consider.
Awesome, that's a great question. We still have time for some more questions, so keep popping them in the chat, and I'm going to see how many we can get out of Andrew. So we're going to be fast. If changes were made on our governance procedure, Andrew, do we have to notify charities?
So you notify us in the sense that on our annual return form, there's an opportunity to tick that and say, yes, we've checked our governance procedures. If you make changes to your rules document specifically, then you need to let us know via updating your details. But if it's making changes to your wider suite of procedures or policies, then you don't need to let us know.
Fantastic. The next question, when is the next governance webinar this week?
The next governance webinar this week, I think, and I have to say the person with me today is the best qualified to answer this question, but is on Friday this week. I'm not sure exactly what time, but she might be able to answer that one for me.
12 o'clock.
12 o'clock. There you
So
go.
yeah, and we're talking about the governance review. So if you want to know more about the changes for charities, there's a webinar out there that you can watch. And this one's going to do a little bit of a deeper dive into what's changed with the governance review. We still have a couple of more minutes. So if we're changing our charity's name, do we require an entirely new deed?
This one I might need a little bit of support with, but my understanding is that you wouldn't need an entirely new deed. You might need to update your details with us. But Francesca, you've worked in this space previously. Thoughts?
I would say go to Community Net, get a variation of trust deed, and if you're an incorporated charitable trust, go and lodge that with the company's office, so you'll be incorporated on their register. When they've accepted your variation, and you'll need to send it through your committee process, obviously, and make sure everyone is happy with the name. There's some requirements around names, so just make sure it meets all those requirements, and the company's office will tell you what they are. But once it's registered with the company's office, then you can update your details with us. But please, if you make a subtle change, do not tip out the baby with the bathwater, I think the saying is. But it's keep it simple. It's not here to complicate things. And if in doubt, I mean, Andrew is saying if in doubt, reach out. It's quite catchy. But it is useful for you to just check in. If you have a question like that, info@charities.gov.nz, and we can tell you.
And this is the kind of amazing stuff that you'll get on Friday if you attend one of our governance webinars. Francesca is an absolute expert at this stuff, so thank you.
I'm not sure about expert, but I've been around a while. There are no more questions, so let's finish this session right on time. And I'm very impressed at how we've kept to time. So thank you very much, Andrew. It's been great to have you talk a bit more about governance. And remember, you can watch this again if you want to.
Thanks so much, everyone. Appreciate your time.
Our next session is on annual reporting, and so that is something that you have to do every year. It's an obligation to charity services. It's one of the things you have to do as a registered charity. So if you are unsure about annual reporting, Lex is here from the charity support team, and Lex spends a lot of time answering emails on the phone. He is a very helpful man at telling people quite simply how to do their annual reporting. And I often listen to him and think, person on the other end must feel quite reassured to have someone like Lex who knows what he's talking about just explain it. So welcome to you, Lex. We're all ready for your presentation.
Thank you, Francesca. I appreciate the warm welcome. That's right, I'm Lex. I'm a graduate charities regulator here at Charities Services. A big part of my role is helping to educate the sector around financial reporting, since reporting annually is one of the key responsibilities of a registered charity. We've heard from lots of charities recently. They've got officers new to role, or it's their first time reporting. So today, I'm going to be providing an overview of the annual reporting requirements for registered charities, why it's important, and what's changed. Don't worry about taking notes during this session. We'll be sending out links and resources after the meeting. First of all registered charities must file an annual return every year. Your annual return is due within 6 months of the end of your financial year or your balance date. The annual return is made up of 2 parts, an annual return form and a performance report. The annual return form helps ensure that we have accurate information about your charity, and this information, once submitted, is what actually appears on the charity's register. The financial statements or performance report is usually a separate document that you provide with that annual return, and that contains information about your charity and your activities, as well as your financial information. So why is annual reporting important? A number of reasons contribute to building overall trust and confidence in the charitable sector. A key driver is transparency around the use of charitable funds, including charities using the majority of their funds to make a positive difference in the areas where the funds are most needed, and letting the public know what they're actually doing. Reporting annually using the standards ensures transparency about where funds have been spent and, for most charities, what services they've actually literally delivered. Performance reports and financial statements are publicly available on the charities register. The register is used every single day by a number of different people, funders who are trying to check on the reporting compliance of charities who have applied, members of the public who might be interested in your organisation. It gets literally thousands of views every single month. The reporting standards themselves are set by the External Reporting Board, or XRB, and they determine what has to be included in your report. They ensure transparent, consistent, and comparable reporting across the charitable sector and allowing charities to tell their stories. Most registered charities are going to be reporting at either Tier 3 or Tier 4, which are the smaller of the 4 tiers. The Tier 4 standard in particular was created specifically by the External Reporting Board for New Zealand charities. It's designed so that anyone is able to complete it, not just accountants. We're also always here to help walk you through the reporting itself so that it's as easy and achievable for everybody as possible, and we'll share where you can get further help at the end of this session. Now, the External Reporting Board and Charity Services have been working to make the reporting easier for charities. We know that it's hard for small charities, so a few changes have been made to reduce the compliance burden. These are the new reporting standards for Tier 3 and Tier 4 charities published by the XRB. Some of the new requirements involve changes to the minimum categories and making some fields that were mandatory optional. While these might all look quite new, you don't have to be scared of these changes, as they actually make it easier for you to put your information into the forms themselves. As a result of the Charities Act and XRB changes, we've also reviewed the forms charities use to register, report, and update their details with us. These changes improve the quality of information on the charities register, making it easier for charities to report and speed up the registration process. And those new forms are now live on our website, available for you to use. Remember, these changes are intended to make it easier for the small charities out there so you can focus on the important mahi you do in the communities. No matter what version you're doing, however, you can approach the performance report in a couple of ways. The first way you can think about it is that it's just a compliance activity that you have to do every single year. The other way you can think about it is that it's actually a really great chance to show off the awesome work your charity has actually done over the last year. genuinely just show off a little bit with what you're doing. You can use your performance report throughout the year to give to funders and donors so that they can see what kind of activities you're involved in. You can also use it to introduce new members of the organisation who have just joined, or people who are considering coming into your committee. It provides a year-on-year comparable snapshot of the work you've achieved, so it makes it easy to see how you're tracking. It also shows at a glance just how much comes in and out of your charity and what you own and what you owe. Because it sits on a public register, it's accessible to members of the public who could be interested in joining or contributing to your organisation. There are a few simple things that you can do to improve your reporting and make it easier for yourselves as well. If you keep good records throughout the year, it's going to be easier to report at the end of the year. Take some time, think about what kind of data that you're going to need to collect across the whole year so that it's readily available come reporting time. Use the templates that you're most comfortable with. We have versions using Microsoft Word, Excel. There's even a PDF version that you can download, print out, physically write on if that's what you prefer or need. If you're particularly creative, you actually also have control over the visual design of your report, as long as it includes the required information. All performance reports must be signed and dated because it shows that the people who run your charity have agreed that it's an accurate record of your year. If you need help, get in touch with us. We're more than happy to help you. We've collated a list of resources that we'll send out to you after the meeting. There are fact sheets, templates, guidance notes. These are all also available on our website. We're also in the final stages of updating our reporting guides for Tier 3 and 4 charities that will take you through everything you need for the new standards and the new forms. We even have a checklist that outlines the key things you need to record throughout the year. We realise that reporting can be tough. If it's new to you, or if you're having trouble, you might need to ask for help. The best way to do that at the moment is by sending us an email, info@charities.govt.nz. Please reach out, send us any questions you have. We'll help you out as much as possible.
Awesome, Lex. I feel so reassured just listening to you. You're very calm, and that was a great presentation. And if you were listening carefully, you will hear there are new reporting standards, there are guides just about ready to go on the website, and there's lots of support and help for you. So let's go to your questions, and if you haven't put your question in the chat and it's burning, please, we've only got 5 minutes, so we might have 7 minutes. So get your questions in and we'll see how many Lex can answer. Lex, we are a Tier 4 charity and we have never filed an annual return before. Should we use the current reporting standards or should we adopt the new standards early?
That's an excellent question, Francesca. My advice to you would be to use the new standards. If you've never reported before, it would be almost double the work for you to learn the current standards and then have to learn the new standards immediately after producing a report. So if this is your first time reporting, if you're new to role or a brand new organisation, I recommend using the new reporting standards and choosing to adopt those early at the moment.
Awesome, great answer, Lex. Hey, and just to let you know, the new standards are a little bit easier. So for you new people adopting up now, if you're new, the standards are easier than they were before, and so that's something to look forward to if you're a charity that's already reporting. If the audit is late, so this is a question about auditing, Lex, if the audit is late, is it better to file the draft reports, so with Charity Services, and then email in the audited reports once they're ready, or do we ask for an extension, which would be the thing we do?
That's actually an interesting question, and the answer is going to change depending on your situation. If you have a statutory obligation to complete an audit or review, if you're over those thresholds, then you cannot file drafts. In that situation, get confirmation from the auditor of their rough timeline for completion, send us in a request for an extension to that date, and we'll be able to consider it and work with you. If you're below the statutory threshold, you can still request a extension, but you're also able to file those drafts with your annual return, have them published online in time, and then when the audit is complete, you can send that in to us and we'll swap it over.
So this question hasn't been asked, but I will ask it for our attendees. Lex, tell us what the statutory thresholds mean and what they are.
Absolutely. Statutory threshold is if your revenue for the previous 2 years exceeds a certain amount, then you have to have an auditor review done. If, let's say you're reporting for 2024, you'd be looking at your annual report that's complete for 2022 and 2023. And if each of those show revenue over $550,000 in each year, then your 2024 report is going to have a statutory requirement for either an audit or review to be completed. And if they're over 1.1 million, then an audit must be completed.
Perfect. So statutory review means it's in the statute, is that right, Lex?
Statutory obligation, absolutely, that's right. It's a legal requirement.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Also worth noting, though, that if your rules say you have to be audited, you have to be audited. You must follow your rules as well as your other legal obligations.
And I'll just add here, if you don't need to be audited, you can change your rules. So have a think about that. Have a chat at your committee meeting. I've heard of really small organisations being audited at a great expense. So, you might want to have that money going to other better charitable purposes than to your auditor. So have a think about that.
Absolutely, Francesca, that's a great point.
We still have 3 more minutes, so some more questions for you, Lex. Where do I find the performance report template that can be used?
The easiest way to download those templates at the moment is just off our resources page on our website. Just go to the home page. There's a button that says resources on the right-hand side.
What if I want to use the new standards? Where do I go?
Those are also on our website. You can go through our Charities Act hub that shows the changes that have happened this year. I believe they're also on the resources page as well. They're dated with what year they were released.
Thank you. And if you find them tricky to find, you can find them also on the XRB website. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Our final speaker today is Angelique van der Zee, and she is joining us from MB. She's also joined by her colleague, David Joslin. So Angelique is the Senior Engagement Advisor and her and David have come to talk about the Incorporated Society's changes and the re-registration process. So I see that there is a lot more people online, and I am very pleased to hear that, because I've been out on the community sessions and I've heard Incorporated Societies, some people still don't know there's a change. So Angelique and David's session will be very useful to you. So thank you, and over to you two.
Thank you, Francesca. One of the projects I'm responsible for is the law changes for incorporated societies. These changes impact all incorporated societies, and some of those are also registered currently with Charity Services. So today I'd like to present you with information on the new Incorporated Societies Act, which is what we call the 2022 Act. And what some of these changes are, what it may mean, what societies will need to do to ensure it remains as an incorporated society. So let me just share with you my presentation. So the Incorporated Societies Act, 1908 Act, which we call the old Act now, has been replaced by the Incorporated Societies Act 2022. The 2022 Act focuses on modernising the old Act and gives more guidance to those running an incorporated society. So the new Incorporated Societies Act came fully into force on the 5th of October 2023. And some charities may be unsure or unaware that they are also an incorporated society. During the presentation, I'll show how to check if you are an entity or if an entity is also registered incorporated society with the Companies Office. So first of all, what's not changing? So societies that are registered with Charity Services will continue to file financial statements and annual returns with Charity Services. However, what they will need to continue to do is also update their society contact details, officer details, and its constitution with the Companies Office. We're finding that a few societies that are also registered with Charity Services are not keeping their details up to date with us. So incorporated societies that are registered charities are subject to most of the same changes as those that aren't. So what this means is that those entities will need to update their constitutions, setting out clear, fair provisions for resolving internal disputes. So that's one of the new changes. Must ensure most of the committee members are members of the society. For some societies, well, all societies, they will no longer need to use common seal, however they may choose to continue that. And all incorporated societies have to re-register before the 5th of April 2026. So just bearing in mind that the 5th of April 2026 is actually Easter weekend, it's Easter Sunday, so just bear that in mind. Being a registered charity or registered with Charity Services is not enough to give an organisation its own legal personality. In other words, the right to sign contracts, sue and be sued. Only being registered as an incorporated society, a company, a charitable trust or other similar entity does. If an incorporated society that is a registered charity doesn't re-register with us by the 5th of April 2026, it will cease to exist. So what does that mean? It basically means all the society's outstanding debts would need to be paid. Any remaining assets would need to be distributed according to its constitution. The society's name would lose the protection it has under the legislation because it would become possible for another group to incorporate as a registered society using this name. The society's members would also lose their right to limited legal liability. So one of the things that a society needs to be asking, does it still fit the criteria of being a society prior to re-registration? But before you start looking at those kind of things, you need to look at your current structure and determine whether the changes to the Act are going to impact your society in any way and whether it is still fit for purpose, basically. You will also need to get in contact with Charity Services and Inland Revenue because there are things that will have an impact on that decision with them. So I've put there where you can go for further information. There's also on Community Toolkit, there is I don't know if it's a document as such, but it's called Choosing the Right Legal Structure for Your Group. It's something that you could use to sort of help you determine whether you still fit the criteria of being a society or whether another entity type is more fit for purpose. Are you an incorporated society? If you are not sure whether your entity is an incorporated society, there's an easy way to check, and that is to just use the society's website and actually do a search on your entity name. Bearing in mind that if you have a CC number, that will not you won't be able to put that in here because it's for Charity Services only. So it would be to put the name of the entity in the field and just hit the search function, and it should come up providing you use its full legal name. So a little bit about the key changes. So there is a minimum of 10 throughout the life of the society. So in the past it was 15 and there was no requirement to keep it at 15 throughout the life of the society. Going forward, the minimum has dropped to 10 and you will need to ensure that you retain that number of 10 throughout. New members need to consent to being members. We have information on our website that explains what that is about. You must have a governing body. Most societies have that already now, but the law now specifies that it must have a committee. There must be a minimum of 3 people, and each person on the committee is an officer. They need to consent to being an officer, and most committee members need to be members. The definition of an officer is now clearly defined and can include a person who has a significant influence, for example, a treasurer or CEO. The officer's duties are defined and modelled on directors' duties in the Companies Act 1993. You need to have a dedicated contact person. That person could be a committee member, or it could be somebody else other than a committee member. You can have up to 3, but the minimum is 1. Any details they give us, they are not publicly available. They're only for the registrar to use. The AGM can no longer be held later than 6 months after the society's balance date. The name of the society must end in the word incorporated, inc. or maniatopo. And all societies will now have to have procedures for managing internal disputes in a way that's consistent with natural justice. Existing societies, those incorporated under the old Act, the 1908 Act, will need to re-register under the new Act, the 22 Act, by the 5th of April if they want to remain an incorporated society. So there are a few things your society will need to do before it re-registers, such as preparing some documents and possibly adopting some new processes to comply with the 2022 Act. The re-registration process involves re-registering your society on the Incorporated Societies Register and providing us with an up-to-date rules document, which is now called a constitution. Once it's re-registered, your society will continue to operate as it has before. So the 2022 Act modernises the way societies operate. It is more comprehensive than the 1908 Act, and it does help integrate best practice into all societies. The 2022 Act places a stronger emphasis on officers acting in the best interest of the society and not its members. So what you would need to do as a society is assess what re-registration means for your society. So basically is look at whether an incorporated society is the right entity type for it. If it is, then look at your rules or constitution to determine what, whether it meets the criteria. If it doesn't, to look at what it needs to include going forward so that it will be accepted as part of the re-registration process. That generally is done by your committee beforehand, and then what you need to do is, once you've made that decision to re-register, is actually present it to your members at an AGM or a special meeting and make that decision as to whether to re-register. So your members have to decide and confirm that that's what you want to do. It's time to review your society's operational processes, also review your society's balance date. More than likely, you'll need to draft a constitution that complies with the 2022 Act or add to it. When you meet as part of an AGM or a special meeting for members, that is the time to approve the updated constitution, agree on the operational processes you've reviewed, decide who the officers will be and decide who the contact person or persons will be, and formally agree to re-register under the 2022 Act. So we do have quite a few resources and tools for societies to help them in this process. So we have a lot of content about the key changes. These are on our website. I'll show you a screenshot of that shortly. Information about re-registration and financial reporting requirements. We have webinars on preparing for registration. We have a video that actually takes you through step by step on how to re-register using the online system. We also have a Constitution Builder tool. So that's a tool where it has all the mandatory requirements in there, and it's a click and select type tool, and you can use this to draft your Constitution. We have created an officer's consent and certificate template that you can print off and give to your officers to sign in for certifying and consenting to be an officer. We do also have a Constitution checklist for those who maybe don't want to use the Constitution Builder tool, who may already have something that is suitable and just need to add a few extra clauses in there. And you can use that checklist, which has all the mandatory requirements of what your Constitution must contain in it, and you can go through and just tick them off, so that sort of helps you as well. And then we have a couple of one-page quick guides on getting re-registration sorted. So if you want to print out a one-pager, take it to your meeting, say these are the things that we need to do, and you can, it's a bit like a checklist and just tick it off as you go. We also have created one for life after re-registration or registration, so that you know what your obligations are once you've re-registered. So this is our Law Changes Hub. It's on our website at www.societies.govt.nz. When you go into that page, this is what you'll see at the top of the screen, and we have this Law Changes Hub specifically for this purpose, where you should be able to find all the information. We update here on any updates that we make to that content, so you can have a look at it regularly and see what's changed since you last were there. This is what the page looks like. So it has separate sections for each thing. It delves a little bit more deeper into some of the questions that we've found that people may have with regards to it, to sort of help you along the way. So you can find more information on our website at www.societies.govt.nz. You can also email us at engage@societies.govt.nz. And thank you very much for your time. We've now got time for questions.
Awesome, Angelique. That was a great presentation. It really does show that there's a lot to think about in that space for incorporated societies. The 1908 Act was very old, and this is modernising a very old Act. And you'll probably have some work to do if you're an incorporated society. So I'd encourage you to have a look at the resources on MB's site. So Angelique, could you stop sharing your screen for a minute and then we can see you? And David, thank you. Welcome, David. I'm making an executive decision and we're going to take 4 minutes of questions because we're out of time now. But I've got some questions coming through. Welcome, David. So one of the first questions, that we've got 4 here on the list, so we'll do 4 and then I'm going to close the meeting. What is the required format for members to provide consent to being a member of an incorporated society? And you've just told us, haven't you, Angelique?
Yeah, I'll let David answer that.
Cool.
Oh, kia ora, everybody. So the question's around the required format for consent forms for joining an incorporated society, but also possibly being an officer of a society. Well, first of all, the consent, we're of the view that ideally it should be in writing, so that there's no doubt as to that someone has consented to either become a member of a society and also consented to be an officer of a society. And then in terms of a form itself, societies are free to develop their own consent forms. I think we've actually got a template form maybe on our website as well around that. Yeah, we're of the view that ideally it should be in writing, and that the rules will set out the constitution of your society will set out the membership joining process that combines the consent to become a member or your officer appointment or election process that will also have the consent to be an officer element, but also the officer has to certify they're not disqualified from acting. So it's really up to societies to develop their own forms if they wish to, but I think we've actually got some examples on our website.
Perfect, thank you. We'll go to the next question. So if a 1908 society ceases to exist, and that's an interesting term, ceases to exist on the 5th of April 2026, will its assets fall to be distributed under its rules or under the 2022 Act?
Yeah, this is a crucial sort of issue for societies that are registered under the 1908 Act at the present time, in terms of this concept of the Act stating that a society that doesn't re-register would cease to exist at the transition date, which is the 1st of April 2026. So what there are a couple of things that can happen.
Can I ask you to keep it really short, David, because we are over time. So yeah.
At that point in time, one is that a society that ceases to exist can actually be restored to the register again under the 2022 Act, or B, the assets of the society that ceases to exist can be subject to a surplus asset distribution under the 2022 Act. So there's a couple of things that can occur for societies that don't re-register.
Perhaps we might need to do some more work together to explain that concept to charities that are incorporated societies and don't re-register. One more question. When we re-register our incorporated society, will our register number remain the same on the incorporated societies register?
Yes, that's correct.
Fantastic. Well, that's a lovely, succinct answer. I would love to have some more time for some questions, because this is a really interesting a space that we find ourselves in with incorporated societies re-registering, and there's been a lot of changes for charities on the whole in the last little while. So if you do need some further information, the Companies Office do have a lot of fantastic information. I'm signed up to their newsletter, that's why I'm always updated. So sign up and you can get that too. And look how friendly they look. I'm sure they take questions too. There is an email address, engage@societies, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Yes.
engage@societies.gov.nz. Yeah. So if you need to email them and ask them some questions, I'm sure they'll be willing to answer. So thank you very much to both of you for taking the time today. And I'm sorry that we're a little bit rushed, but that's great. And we will keep talking to each other, so we are providing the same information to all the charities out there. Ka pai, thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. So now it's time for me to close the meeting, but first of all, let's have a virtual round of applause for all our presenters today. So Andrew with the Good Governance, Lex with his annual reporting session, and Angelique and David coming in and telling us a little bit about incorporated society. So that's fabulous. We can all give them a clap. Thank you very much to all our speakers. It's really useful to have these 10-15 minutes to explain some complex topics, but just to make it easier so you understand what's required of you. And now it is time for me to close the meeting, and I would just like to thank you for being a really great audience. I'd like to thank my colleagues out, they are in rooms behind me, they've been brilliant, and our producer behind us, he has been an inspiration today, making me smile. I've got a smiley face here, then he's smiling at me to make me smile, so you have a better meeting. Thanks, Cam. So thank you all for your work that you do in your communities. It is amazing the efforts that you go to make Aotearoa a better place for all of us. So thank you very, very much. And I'm just going to close with a karakia. So, kia horo, te marino, kia whakapapa pūnamu, te moana. He hurahi mā tātou i te rangi nei, aroha atu, aroha mai, tātou ia, tātou katoa. Thank you very much for attending today. Ka kite anō.